We're here to call the meeting to order of the Board of Adjustment, August 16th. And just a few things before we start. If you have any devices that are on or can play, could you please turn them off or put them into silent mode? And if you're going to speak on the matter and you're not an applicant, we'd appreciate it if you would give us your, fill out the slip and give us your name and address. And when you present, if you could identify yourself, who you're representing, and your name and address. So I'm ready for the clerk. We're here to receive the minutes of the August 2nd, 2018 meeting, yes?
Yes, and I believe there was a couple of corrections on the minutes. On item number 1, case number 14489, that had a 5-year limit on the time, and also for
I believe it's item number 14508, is that correct?
for the special exception.
Yes.
It had a 3-year for the medical mobile home.
Okay, and do I have a motion to receive as amended or amend?
I would move to accept as amended.
Second.
All in favor, signify. Oh, I've got to turn it on, sorry. The motion to receive passed. So we're here on continuance requests and withdrawals.
Yes, we have 4 continuances. Item number 1, case number 14489, is requesting to continue this to the September 6th meeting.
Is anybody here to speak on the matter? Do I have a motion?
Can we move to continue, after we hear them, can we move to continue all of them at once, or do we do them separately? Okay.
Okay. We also have item number 2, case number 14514, request to continue to September 6th. Item number 3, case number 14515, is requesting to continue to September 6th. And also item number 8, case number 14521, is requesting to continue to September 6th.
And before we entertain a motion on that, again, is anybody here to speak on the matter? Okay, I entertain a motion on that.
I move to continue those matters.
I'll second them.
All in favor? Vote. The motion passed to continue.
We have item number 4, case number 14516, application for a special exception to allow multifamily residential development in the HP Historic Preservation District, located at 620 Northwest 21st Street.
Hi, I'm Marva Ellard, and I'm one of the managers of Midtown Builders, LLC. Would you like a little history?
Yes, I would like you to present your application today and to discuss any other boards and commissions who've heard it and some matters. And I think we have somebody else from planning to talk about it too. Could you present your application?
Chairman Lewis, we first got a special permit in the fall of 2014. Is that right, Mr. Wilson? I think it was the
Yes.
fall of 2014. We didn't actually buy the property until January of 2015. And this is part of the old Sunbeam campus on 21st, so we bought all of Sunbeam's holdings on 21st and 20th Street, which included 3 group homes on 20th, a couple of vacant lots on 21st, the building that we now call the ARC, which had been their family counseling building, and the original Sunbeam home that was in this location. It was actually the 3rd Sunbeam home, but the first 2 burned down in other locations. It was built in the late 20s, and so we came before you all then and received special permission to turn the Sunbeam home into 13 apartments. And so we got busy redoing the group homes into single family. 2 of those have been redone and sold. The third one we're finishing, and it will be sold the end of this month. We turn those into single family owner occupied homes. We redid the family counseling building, and it is kind of an office co-op, and it's completely full. We sold 2 lots off on the very west end of our property on 21st, and it's a single-family home is under construction on that site for some people moving here from Veneta. And so when we started back on the Sunbeam home, we'd gotten a demolition permit, so we'd been doing that work. And then when we applied for a building permit is when we discovered that I dropped the ball and that first special permit had expired. And so we went back, so I came up to the 9th floor and talked to Mr. Wilson and Mr. Chambliss, and we decided that I needed to reapply for a special permit. It's still the same planned use as it was before, 13 apartments. Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority put money into the project, so 7 of the apartments will be earmarked for moderate income. The other 6 are market rate. We have been through the HP Commission 2 or 3 times? 3 times. And so it's a rehabilitation tax credit project also, so it gets state and federal rehabilitation tax credits. So we're rehabbing it to the Secretary of Interior standards. We've gotten our certificate of appropriateness from the HP Commission on the work that we're doing, and Ms. Friddle has given comments on it a couple of different times as far as its appropriateness for the neighborhood, and the HP Commission itself has voted twice to support the project and its use.
Could you discuss the parking and any future possible development and restrictions that you may have on your funding or your grant as to how it's to proceed and be developed?
Certainly. That's a pretty good slide there. We meet the parking standards of the City of Oklahoma City for the 13 apartments. We've gone through that whole process. Mainly, our reviewer is waiting for your decision before we can get our building permit. The money that Okura put in the project restricts those 7 apartments for 6 years. And so we can choose to keep them that way as long as we'd like, but according to our agreement with them, it's for 6 years. There have been a couple of questions about Section 8, and they are not designated Section 8 apartments. They are just moderate income apartments, which I think is 80% of average median income for the area. We're hoping that we get some seniors that would like to live there. We're hoping that we see some single parent and young child families that might want to live there, because it's basically catty corner to Wilson Elementary, if you all are familiar with that part of town. It sits right in the middle of a neighborhood, so we want it to be residential in nature, and that's what we plan on that building being, is a residential building.
Board members, any questions?
Sure. On this site plan, I see a date here of 2018. I'm just curious if the application or the site plan changed at all from the first time this was granted.
I think we had to modify the handicap ramp that's on the west side, because we didn't have the property line located accurately, and that came up when we sold those 2 lots next door. I think we've added a bicycle ramp or a bicycle rack or 2, just trying to kind of keep up with the times a little bit, but other than that, it hasn't changed.
And before I hear from citizen to be heard, if Katie Friddle will come forward and discuss briefly. and the recommendations of HB.
Katie Friddle, I'm staff in the Planning Department for the Historic Preservation Commission, and I mostly just came in case there were any questions, but the HP Commission, as Ms. Ellard said, has recommended approval of the special exception. We've also granted a certificate of appropriateness for what I believe is most of the exterior work to the property, which is the primary area of the Commission's interest. So.
Also, there were specific findings by the Commission regarding the special exception that would be in harmony with finding the conditions to be met, correct, that the project had been going on and had been quite a bit of the work done, correct?
Yes. The Commission had originally supported the special exception in 2014, and so they stayed with that same recommendation for this recent review.
Also, they found that the residence density is appropriate and would enhance housing for downtown, which is insufficient for moderate income people. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's an important factor, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any questions of the board of Ms. Friddle? I believe we have, thank you. I believe we have a citizen to be heard, Leah Eldridge.
I live a block away. This is the first notice that I have received or any of my neighbors that we know of, so this is a new thing to us, and I realize that we're fairly far down the road. The only questions that we really had, and of course I'm familiar with Marva's work, and I don't have any doubt that it will be done well, but the main thing that we were questioning is if it's a 13-unit building, potentially that could be 26 cars. And I don't see how there's adequate parking unless you are counting the entire block, including the new Sunbeam home.
You want to ask?
She has a question specific. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Some of the apartments are pretty small. The two smallest are 500 and something feet, so I think they'll be single residences. There are 4 two-bedroom apartments in the building, and the rest are one-bedroom apartments. You can't tell from that slide, but there is parking that goes all the way behind the family counseling building.
Right.
And Lee, we think on evenings and weekends that parking would be available for guests or overflow. I don't think we'll be in the street at all. It's not legal to park on the street in front of Sunbeam, and we promised the neighborhood we would keep it that way, and we don't plan on changing that, so we think we can contain our parking.
Well, again, the only concern when I hear that is that potentially you all could sell off the ARC as you've sold off those 2 lots, in which case there would not be adequate spaces left over for the apartments.
Well, we meet the city's parking requirements with the parking that's just directly behind the Sunbeam home.
How many spaces are there?
I don't, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15?
And you've got 13 apartments.
I believe they meet the requirements. This has already been before us before in 2014, and the only reason it isn't completed is because they let it lapse before it was finished. So
Right, and the only
the
reason we
conditions
haven't-
are the same today as they were then. So
Well, but we didn't receive any notice, so we couldn't have looked at, we didn't know anything about it, so this is just the first opportunity we've had to ask. And I do think that that's an honest consideration, 15 spaces for 13 apartments. I
But-
don't know.
The parking calculations is going to be looked at by plan review, and that's not something that goes out to the public. It just, if it meets code, they issue a permit.
And that
So-
meets code?
Most likely does. I haven't reviewed it for that, but the plans examiners will review it for that. Also, bicycle racks will bring down parking some, but it will have to meet code or they won't issue a permit. But it will not go out to the general public for that. That's not something that comes to a committee. It's just, they're looking at the code.
Well, I mean, the whole plan, the entire proposal, we really haven't known anything about until very recently, so we haven't had an opportunity to ask questions of Marva or anyone else.
And you resided there, just a couple of questions for you, ma'am. You resided there since 2014? In your
No.
your residence? Okay. I was just wondering if maybe you got notice of the last time that
No.
the applicant was before the board. Okay. The Historic Planning Commission, the proceedings before the Planning Commission, did you receive notice of that?
I owned the house at that time, but I didn't live there,
Okay.
and we didn't receive notice.
Okay.
And ordinarily, we probably wouldn't, because we don't exactly, usually, I think, notice is required for the abutting properties. We don't abut, but for some reason, we all got this one, so I'm the designee.
So for historic preservation, I mean, you didn't receive notice of that meeting?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay. And you said "we" a few times? What do you mean by "we"?
Well, my next-door neighbor and the neighbor across the street and the neighbors, there are quite a few neighbors who are very concerned about this entire area, just this immediate block. There's a lot going on, and some good, some bad. We are having a lot of trouble keeping track of who's on first and who owns what now, that kind of thing. I would say out of that block, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 properties actively being deconstructed and reconstructed, so it's a lot. And this is the time for us to be asking questions, not, as we become aware of it, not down the road and say, gosh, that makes us mad, we wish you, that kind of thing, so.
How many feet do you live from the property?
I'm sorry?
How many feet away does your property live?
I don't abut it at all, but for some reason, those people even further away from me got notice of this. I am kind of a catty corner across the street, but I don't abut it.
I believe Ms. Fredel can respond to that.
Well, I just wanted to say that the notice the notice area for Board of Adjustment and for Planning Commission for some other city bodies is different than HP Commission's. HP's has kind of a funny little matrix of the properties across the street and one over the property to the south and one over and to the north and one over. So it's very likely that you would get notice of this meeting, but would not have been noticed for the
Right, we
HP
didn't.
Commission meeting.
We wouldn't have been notified of HP.
Although it would have, this would have been in the meeting agenda, which would have gone to the neighborhood association, but not necessarily to a large radius.
Yeah, the neighborhood association doesn't publish it, so, but that's not anybody else's fault. And again, we're not objecting to it at all. I have a great deal of confidence in Marva and what she does. It's just, we're very concerned about the parking if the ARC is sold off, which it potentially could be. But then, maybe by then, no one will have a car. I don't know. Just something to bring up. But it is a concern. So,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Board members, anybody have anything they'd like to say? Weigh in?
I'm a bit hesitant to support it currently. I think I'd feel more comfortable if they had a continuance until the next meeting in order to discuss and hopefully resolve some of these issues with the surrounding neighbors. It's kind of where I currently sit.
Today, if you could approach, today we only have 3 members today, and it will take a vote of 3 to pass the item. You're certainly welcome to request a continuance at this point in time for a meeting or 2 meetings to have more additional board members present or also address some issues you would like. I personally would like to say that I am in favor of this project. Notice was given, and it was before us, not me, but it was before this board, and under the notice procedures required by law, both of the lower level and the other, of HP and the Board of Adjustment in 2014, and quite a bit of money and time has been spent on this thing, and everybody's been reviewing it, and it appears to meet the requirements, but I understand your concern, and that's why I may suggest that you may want request a continuance to the next meeting is September 6th. If you would like to do that, we would certainly entertain a motion there.
Could I hear Mr. Donaldson's thoughts?
Well, bear in mind, it takes a unanimous vote with all of us. I'm inclined to support it. The one thing that does concern me is there's a little bit of question about the parking, and we don't have a clear, I'm not entirely clear that it meets the requirement on the code for parking, and that's my only concern.
I've seen the plan reviewer's checklist, and she has checked parking as being satisfied with parking. To Mr. Merchant's concerns, back in 2014 and 2015, we met with the neighborhood and groups of neighbors 5 to 6 times on this project and tried to answer all the questions people had, and it's the same project. We haven't changed the scope or the number of units or anything since that point in time, and as your chairman mentioned, every day is money to me. You know, I'm sitting here paying people and paying interest and not being able to move forward. And so I've got Urban Renewal wanting me to move forward, and I know this is my own doing, so I'm not blaming anybody for this, but I feel like we've put forth great effort in the beginning to talk to the neighbors about it, and we've only done what we said we were going to do. And so if you could give that some consideration, I would appreciate that.
Is there any, I mean, I'm not sure if it's possible, but is there any way to increase the number of parking spaces or anything that might alleviate?
Well, but if it meets the city requirement, why would we need to increase parking spaces?
Well, you'd get these objectors off your back, and
I mean, they'll be free to park behind the building we own next door also, and so there's another at least 20 spaces there. So it's not like we're just, and there's always available spaces there. We're going to gate the drive most likely between the two buildings, because one sits here and one sits here, and they share a common driveway. And so we'll probably gate that drive so people that work there and live there will have access to that. So we've not had any parking issues, and we've got roofers and everybody else all over the place right now and trying to finish the last of the group homes, and so we've tried to get some of those workers to park back there to keep them off of 20th because, like Lee said, it's been pretty hectic over there the last year, but I think 20th is calming down, and we are not asking for people to be able to park in Sunbeam. People park on the north side of 21st. It's legal to park on the north side of 21st. And most of that parking is people who live on the north side of 21st, because there's some shared driveways, there's some, old neighborhoods have parking constraints. So we've not asked for people to be able to park on the south side of 21st because Wilson is there, and that kind of turns into a parking pickup line for people picking their kids up, and we didn't want to make that any more complicated than it is. But I'm happy to listen to your suggestions and requests, but I do feel like we've met our requirements. And Mrs. Eldridge and I have known each other for probably 30 years, something like that. And so I understand that change is uncomfortable, but we're trying to integrate this building into the residential fabric of the neighborhood. I can promise you there was more parking issues when Sunbeam still occupied the buildings than there will be when we're there, because that's why they built a new campus. They just outgrew this.
I believe I'm going to defer to the city attorney, but if you're asking her for a vote today, I would like to have her address the number required and what would be the effect if it didn't pass.
So if there aren't 3 votes either direction, it gets automatically continued. It's not a denial today. It would just automatically be continued to the September 6th meeting.
Are you wanting a vote today on your application? If you could approach, please, so we can hear you.
I'm getting there. I'm sorry. If Mr. Merchant feels comfortable, I would like a vote today, but if he's not comfortable, then we'll continue. But I really don't know what will change in the next, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, however long that is.
Yeah, well, I'll let I guess she had something else to say, so, before I comment. If you want her to come forward.
I can guess then, when you all originally submitted this for approval, the two lots that you were just sold off to build a house on at the end of the block, right next to your apartments, were parking spaces, but that didn't include it?
No, Lee, at the same time we got, I'm sorry, at the same time that we got, I call it the wrong thing. Is it special permit, special exception? Lee, we got permission to build a duplex on the lot east of the Family Counseling Center, which is still empty.
Okay.
And we got permission to build a triplex on the lot that we sold and they're building single family on now.
Right.
So there was no parking plan there.
Okay, so that was not included in the potential parking when you submitted the proposal?
No.
Okay, that was my only question.
Yeah, I was going to say, I certainly don't want to hold up the project when you meet the conditions for approval. My thought was if there are protestants in your surrounding area, it would be wise to resolve any of their concerns if at all possible. That said, I can still support the application. I tend to agree with you. There might not be much that you would change. My hesitation was just to see if there was a possibility that you could work out some of those concerns with your neighbors.
I'll still agree to meet with them regardless of the actions today. I would just like to be able to go forward because of my neglect. We've been kind of on hold, and I'd like to move forward with the construction. But I'm happy to work with Lee and the other neighbors and have a meeting so they can ask their questions. But I'd like plan review to be able to finish and hopefully issue a building permit and keep moving forward. We've done about all we can do without a building permit right now.
I'd move to support the application.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to support the application for a special exception. Hearing that, let's all vote. The motion passed.
We have item number 5, case number 14517, request for a variance to the minimum 5-acre lot size requirement in the AA Agricultural District located at 12112 Davis Road.
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the applicant. This is as with many projects, they're unique, that's why we're here. This little red dot on there is the strip of land that's currently a non-conforming use. It's a 4-acre tract that's in AA, which requires 5-acre tracts for a house. You can grab that. Sorry. And what makes the property a little special is that it's bisected by a 100-foot wide OG&E line. The current residents live on this piece of the tract. There's a pond here, and this is, except for right here, this lot is really undevelopable. So the owners of this lot have bought this larger piece of land to the west of this drive and have built and are building a new house, and they have a buyer for their old house, but they want to maintain this part of the lot so they still have access to their pond. They have family that owns the other side of the pond. And so we're here today to ask for this exception to the size of the lot in AA. Number one, we're under that anyway. We're going to provide a 2-acre tract. All the functionality of that lot will remain as it is today. We've agreed in our application that we will not permit any structures to be built on this house, so it will remain vacant, or on this property, it will remain vacant. And this just gives them access to the family pond. And this other exhibit was created to show you what's around them. So in blue is lots that are all under 5 acres. So this is a rural part of the city, but most of it's developed into 1 and 2-acre lot developments. Even this piece to our east has been divided into 2-acre lots, even though they still don't meet the requirement of the AA. So we don't know how that happened, but that's the way the records are. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the application.
I do have one question or comment. A lot of lot splits I've seen have been disastrous because you don't have access. And in this particular situation, both of those lots will have access to the road. Is that correct?
That's correct. Davis Street. It's a private drive.
And that, I was curious who was owning the property behind there, because that pond goes over the two parcels if you were to split them and own to the parcels behind them. So that's also family members?
Right.
I don't have any other questions. Board members?
I'm glad you clarified where the new home is. It
Okay.
puts it all in perspective after I saw that. It said across the street.
Yeah, this is the Davis Drive that we mentioned. It's a private drive. This is the current 4-acre lot that we want the ability to divide. Our clients live in this lot, they have a buyer, and they're going to move into this house that they have under construction, or I think it's complete now. And so they own this piece.
I went out there, and I think the first sign I saw said Davis Farm or something like
Yep.
that. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm normally against something like this, but I try to wrestle with my mind and look at all the analysis. You've got all the reasons, I think, with respect to the development. I don't know how much I can hold you to that, but again, I understand it's undeveloped property, and you've agreed to condition it, so I would be in favor of any other board members.
I would tend to support it, and I would move that we do the variance.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, vote. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, let's vote.
Thank you.
It passes.
We have item number 6, case number 14519, request of Johnson Associates, Inc., for a variance to the location, landscaping, maneuvering, and street right-of-way, and I-2 moderate industrial and C4 general commercial district located at 2322 North Broadway Avenue.
Again, Tim Johnson here on behalf of the applicant. This is a kind of an iconic location. Byron's Liquor, who has been there a long time, they are in the process of doing some upgrading of their property. They've taken a building out. We're adding more parking in here, which, as many of you know, parking is a big problem for them at times. And so in doing that, we're wanting to bring it up into conformance they have been utilizing this portion of this very large right-of-way on Broadway as staging for their parking that exists there today. So we're not bringing any more parks out into the street. But we're just asking to make legal the use of ingress and egress through this portion of the drive. And you can see it's well removed from the path of the roadway, even though all this is paved. So it's just it's a unique situation. The drive's way down here. The maneuvering area for the driving lane, it appears to be on their property, but it's really in the right-of-way. And so this effort would allow them to be in conformance by allowing them maneuvering the right-of-way. It doesn't negatively impact the use of the road, again, as it's being used that way today. And then this will also, by bringing them into conformance here, allows them to do the upgrading of the parking lot, new lighting, new landscaping, which they have none. So one tree would be a huge deal. But you can see we're adding islands to add the landscaping to bring the parking into conformance with the
You're
landscape.
asking for two variances, the one on the placement of your landscaping, is that correct?
Correct.
And what are you, and the second one would be on the maneuvering, which has occurred since I've been, since I graduated from law school, which was quite some time ago. It's always been like that, right?
That's right.
And what part of the street was, somebody said you lost some of the street area or some of the parking area through the years. I didn't quite understand what that scenario was about.
I'm not sure what that, you recall that? I don't recall. I don't know where that came from.
Board members?
The only thing, just to kind of clarify for me, is I think it might be on one of these exhibits, but the location of the landscaping, if you were in conformance, just so I can get an idea of what type of variance.
So if you've been near there, there's a retaining wall in here, and there's a requirement to put some landscaping in the street right away, and we can't. It's wall-to-wall pavement, sidewalk, and retaining wall. So something would have to give, like a part of the sidewalk would have to give.
Yeah, like Diane, I've been to that parking lot before, and Byron's on a Saturday in Oklahoma City is an experience. So any kind of upgrade, I think, is welcomed.
In the interest of full disclosure, I have represented Byron's in the past. It's been probably 5 years. I don't think there's a conflict, but in the interest of full disclosure, I want to make that known.
We do not have an objection.
Unless there's anyone else to be heard,
Is there a motion on this?
I'd move to approve application 14519 for the reasons that it meets the statutory requirements.
I'll second it.
Let's take a vote. Oh, sorry. There we go. Sorry with my machine, I'm not doing very well.
Thank you all.
It passed. The variance is passed.
Item number 7, case number 14520, request for a variance to the maximum 10-foot building setback and a variance to the front yard fence height and fence material in DTD 1 Downtown Transitional Limited District located at 1216 Classen Drive.
Brian Fitzsimmons, Fitzsimmons Architects, 2721 North Walker. The variance, this has been before the downtown design review and was unanimously approved on the condition of this variance, and the variance was, I believe, recommended for approval. There's two variances. One is regarding the setback by the zoning rules up to 40% of a non-single family house, which is some of the interest here because these are being built together even though they're single families. They're considered a commercial use. Only 40% of an elevation is allowed to be further than 10 feet from the property line. As it sits, 4% of the house is beyond that rule. However, the angle of the houses, they all do come to the street. It's basically an effort to create a little bit of courtyard for the residents and also have an orientation toward the downtown view, which was part of the design, and also conforms with the diagonal pattern that's on the Villa Teresa site with the existing houses. So that's one variance. The other variance was probably that previous slide, and you can see in that diagram the percent that's beyond the 10 feet, and it's very little of the entire elevation. The other variance is for fence height and material. Go back to that one diagram. So the houses are elevated, which is the condition of the actual site, about 3 feet above the sidewalk, and that's how the land sits. So without excavating out, you wouldn't be able to do that. As such, you're allowed to have 4-foot tall fence from that elevation, but it has to be, according to the zoning, entirely metal. What we're asking for is 18 inches of masonry to come up above and be part of that conforming height fence. And just to give a little bit of sense of privacy, but it's not actually a visual privacy. So that's basically it.
Discuss just a little bit more what it was and what it's becoming, and just a little more in the development of the old Villa Teresa days and Dewey issues and some other issues. Just
She's the better storyteller in that.
okay, thank you.
That's about the most I've heard Brian talk in one stretch in the 15 years I've known him, so, what? My partner, Billy Woodring, and I, and some investors purchased the site of the Villa Teresa School and Convent in September of 2017. And we're keeping all of the buildings on the site with the exception of some temporary storage buildings that were probably drug in the 70s or 80s, but all of the historic structures are remaining. Brian and his firm are our architects on the site, and so to make it function and to bring some life to that site, we're building new condos on Dewey, and Dewey is right there. That's where the townhouses are that Brian talked about, and when it was a school and convent, that was the playground. So no one really ever paid that much attention to it because it's always been vacant land. The sisters closed the school in 2012. Their order had gotten very small, and a lot of the sisters were older, and they didn't feel that they could financially afford to subsidize the school because they were hiring a lot of lay people as teachers and other administrative help. So it was a really sad day for Midtown, because I've lived in this part of town since 1981, and that was one of my favorite things, was the sisters taking all the little kids on walks through the neighborhood on the little ropes. I'm sure some of you probably saw that. And so it was owned by a different group for several years. We were concerned that it was going to be torn down, and then they offered it for sale, and we decided we better buy it. So we did. And so we approached Brian, and he came up with the idea of tilting the townhouses to the southeast, so they line up kind of with Classen Drive and aim more at downtown and It gave us an opportunity to give people a small enclosed yard in the front and create more of a feeling of privacy. And we have some patios and decks on the back. We have some green spaces. All of them have two-car garages. And then the building that's right on the corner of Classen Drive and Dewey is a building that is a 3-story building that will have 6 flats, and all the townhouses are 3 stories. And so we're going to redo the school building that the sisters built in the probably 50s into 11 condos. They'll be schoolroom size, classroom size. So they're smaller than the ones we're starting with. And then there's a yellow stucco house that's also in the second phase that will either be a condo duplex or a single family. And there are 2 other main structures on the site, 2 houses that were built by a family named Anderson that ended up giving the money for MD Anderson Hospital in Houston. And one of the buildings became the convent, and the sisters added a large addition on the back of it, and the other building was a residence also, and so hopefully that will be a boutique hotel. So that's kind of the whole site plan. And so we're starting with the new construction along Dewey, and like Brian said, I think DDRC was very pleased with the project, but we've got this offset issue that we need to talk to you all about.
Laura Griggs, would you please approach and discuss the meeting and the recommendations? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Griggs from the Planning Department, and I was really here to answer questions, but the exhibit that they have up now clearly shows the issue with the setback. Staff and DDRC was extremely supportive of not meeting the setback from Classen Drive, because our concern was if they did build it out to the street, you would lose the view that you've had forever driving up there and seeing all of the other buildings that they're going to retain.
The setback is only as to the Classen?
No, that's part of it. If you look at that exhibit, you can see there's 2 lines drawn. I'm sorry, I'm used to having the mouse going like this, but there's 2 lines drawn, and the internal line is showing you the 10-foot maximum setback. So you can see along Classen Drive the fact that the building is set back further, and then as you go up Dewey, I believe there's 4 buildings. 2 of those buildings exceed the 40%, because you're going to have a maximum 40% setback more than the 10 feet, and then the other 2 are fine. It's kind of hard to calculate because everything's at an angle. But DDRC did support their proposal, and their recommendation was supportive of the variance. The fence is one that our fence regulations are extremely restrictive, and so it doesn't allow much flexibility, as well as how we measure the height of a fence. And it's from internal to the wall, because the wall is a retaining wall from the sidewalk up. So we're measuring from the grade on the inside, the building side, and then you measure up to the top of the fence. And so it's too tall because we don't allow the taller fences in the front yards, as well as the material. But DDRC was supportive of that and recommended the variance.
Thanks. Board members. Any questions? Any more? Any motions?
I don't see anyone else to be heard on this, so
I'm sorry. Anybody to be heard? I didn't see anybody else in the audience. I'm sorry.
I'd move to approve case number 14205 for the reasons that it meets the statutory requirements for variance.
I'll second that.
All in favor? The variance is passed. We are at the end of our agenda with all the continuances. We have other items. Does anybody have any citizens to be heard as I don't see any additional citizens, as we've asked earlier. Any reports, additional items, other business? So, we're
I
adjourned?
move we adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.